If you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe and become part of this community. Oh, and also, go cop that fresh merch and listen to my new album in the description. We gotta talk about my man, D to the Rizzy, Drake again, because this man is heading into 2022. There are some promising things on the horizon that he might drop this year. He just, got off of the release of CLB, which was a record that I personally didn't really like, even though it commercially did really well. But today, I wanted to discuss what is next up for him in this hip-hop game, what he's gonna drop next, and how he can continue being sustainably successful in hip-hop and the music industry. So let's jump straight into this and talk about this. So CLB dropped in September of last year. You'll all probably heard it. We had a couple of thoughts on this. We've discussed this so many times, but I didn't like it very much. It seemed very low effort to me. It seemed like it kind of seemed like a troll, kind of like, yo, I can drop anything and y'all will buy it. Like, it was successful in the commercial sense extremely, did crazy numbers, and a couple of songs on there are pretty good. I'm not trying to discredit the whole record, but it was just really low effort, just a playlist of a couple of songs he had recorded. And the question is now for me, this is like a two split road now for Drizzy. Either he's just gonna continue on this path of okay, for the next 10 years he can probably put out mediocre stuff, low effort music like CLB, and people will buy it. People will say that it's great because, in terms of this poppy hip hop sound, people will buy it and it's great music. But it's not something that's going to be here for forever and timeless art in that sense. So that's kind of like the decision he has to make. So either it's that, down that route, down that path of he can just continue making a whole lot of money. He knows that this works. He knows that this principle works. He can continue making a whole lot of money with this path. He can continue putting out this low effort CLB type of quality, maybe a couple of hits here or there that are going to blow up and, make him just maintain his status. And that's the way he can go. But to me, if I was Drake, that would be a pretty narrow horizon as to what's still next for me. And I know I'm not Drake, and I know I'm not in his position. He can do whatever he wants, but this is just kind of what I would envision his career at the split road right now. The other side of the road, the other path that he could take, is focusing on making another great album. And I'm talking about another, when we talk about Drake and his classic album, quote unquote, that is such an overused term, but I would say Take Care. Take Care was a record that was from top to bottom pretty concise. It was cohesive. The whole mood was the same for the record, even though, some of the tracks were really different from each other. We could kind of see a more personal side from him. We could see him being very authentic on that record and see him actually putting in a lot of work and trying to make it, not being sure if he could make it. And that's kind of where I see Take Care at. Another great example is Nothing Was the Same. Even though that was conceptually not as good as Take Care to me, it was still a great record. Not as long. It was 13 tracks, I think. But every track had its own characteristic. Every track had its own personality. And you can look back at it and be okay, this was actually a pretty cool record and is probably going to stand the test of time. I'm still listening to Nothing Was the Same to this day. I think the last album that he made like this, at least that he attempted to make like this, because this is a very distinction we have to make, is Views. And before y'all start typing in the comments Views was trash, I agree to a certain extent. Views was way too overhyped back when it dropped. But at least he was trying to do something with it. At least in his mind, it was I'm trying to create this Toronto sound. And I'm proud of where I come from. And I want to immortalize that in the music and make this album about the Six, about Toronto. And you can tell from the tracks on the record that he was trying to do this. Even though the music itself wasn't the best all the way throughout, at least it had a certain, when you listen to the album, you were okay, I'm listening to Views. This is the album. I may like it or I may not like it, but it's not that this track could be from the last 3 records because they were all just playlists. There's actually one album with one sound that people can look back onto, and they can like it or not, but at least it was one album, one body of work, one body of art. And that's why I'm saying that Views was the last album like that, because what did we have after that? We had Scorpion, just completely commercial playlisting. We had those Dark Lane demo tapes, just him trying to, I like the kind of idea behind it, putting out the leaks, and we had CLB now, so nothing really great. So he knows that he can just keep doing this, but putting out mediocre stuff, low effort stuff, but I would like him to take the other route. And he just signed a new deal with Universal. You'll probably have seen this. I made a video on it. $400 million, which is pretty big. And this deal does encompass, and this is what I said, it includes recordings and publishing. So that kind of hints at him, he will drop new music. It's hints at him kind of like putting out more music in the future, putting out more albums. So, this kind of the question, which route will he go? It's not a question of whether he will stop or not, because now he's obligated under the contract to do so. Drake is someone who stayed this successful for such a long time, now over a decade, like 15 years, by always looking at what's new. What's the wave right now, and how can I ride that wave? And he was always successful over this long time by hopping on these new waves and these new trends. He did it with trap, for example, when the Migos came out, 2014, 2015, 2016. I can just, so many examples for this, like the Block Boy JB single as well, that people were just on their wave and Drake hopped on it, and it just, went to a completely another level. But when you look at like what's popping right now, the underground, and like what's coming up right now, I'm maybe like looking at the rage, type of niche in hip hop. I'm looking at those artists now coming out of the underground, on their rage beats that are kind of like from the bottom up, taking over the mainstream right now. Drake is not really tapped into that. We've seen him try like a rage beat on that Trippie Redd record, Trip at Night, obviously, where he tried it. It wasn't bad, but it was also not really it. The song didn't do too well. So we can see that Drake is still a little hesitant on dropping on these new underground type of beats and instrumentals and waves and trends in hip hop. And I think that could come to his disadvantage. I might make a whole nother video talking about this, because I think that's a very interesting aspect of Drake and how he may be failing now looking at this in the future. But I think that's also another component in him trying to maintain his long-lasting success and why he might lose it. So that's like, as I said in the beginning, that's the crossroad. He can continue doing this, or he could look at how can I create a timeless piece of, art, and he could do both by hopping on new trends. But I think if he just stays true to himself, does the sound that works best for him, he can focus on making another great album like Take Care, like Nothing Was the Same, like the idea behind Views, and I think that will benefit him in the long run way more than just making the next, $100 million and more than that. So that's kind of my thoughts on this, where Drake is headed next. Now I want to know what you think about this. What do you think Drake got coming up next? We talked about Scary Hours 3 in the past. I'm going to make more videos on that as well, so make sure you're subscribed if you always want to stay up to date with the Drake news. What do you think about the stuff that I talked about, the crossroad he's at right now, him hopping on new trends and all of that? All of your thoughts on this and all of your kind of takes on this, especially if you disagree with me, that way we can start a conversation. All of that, please let me know in the comments down below. If you watched this video to the end and liked it, and you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and go follow my social media, and most importantly, join my Discord in the description. Until the next one, you'll have an incredible day, and y'all take care.